Hi, everyone. I'm Olivia DiGirolamo, Director of Marketing at ServiceMinder. I've been in the franchising space now for about 3 years, and today I am joined by a panel of franchise leaders to talk about the franchisor and supplier relationship. So we all know that the Z and ZOR relationship is super important, but as the franchise community grows and client expectations rise, it is crucial to know how to select vendors and then maintain a successful working relationship. So before we dive into that, I will pass the mic over to the panelists for quick intros.
Let me go first?
Yes.
Yeah, so my name's Ben Fox. I'm with 5-Star Franchising, and I'm head up our marketing as well as a couple of our customer experience brands. So we have a company called ProNexus, which is a call center, contact center, customer experience brand. And then we have an in-house marketing agency called 5-Star Marketing Service that I head up as well. And so I sit on both sides of this conversation with being a supplier to the home services space in general, and then also being a franchisor and trying to select good suppliers and good partners and making sure we're supporting our franchisees with the best we can find.
Hi guys, I'm Yvonne Verity, co-founder of Clean Eats. You guys kind of met my husband yesterday with the brand. My job with Clean Eats is I do all the food, so I'm really in tune with our vendors that come in, and it's a great partnership as long as that you can find the right vendors to support you and your franchisees. So we have 115 units at the moment with 75 more in development in 26 states. So those vendors are very important to get to all of our franchisees in our community.
Hey, good morning, guys. 1 second. Hello? Hello? Okay, perfect. Hey, good morning, guys. Ben Woodruff, co-CEO of Whoops Macarons and Gifts. Also co-founder of Remarkable Brands. Excited to be on the panel this morning. I started my career on the supplier side, and throughout my career have been on all sides, multi-unit franchisee, owner of a brand, and now, interestingly enough, I find myself as board chair of a franchisee, which is a tech company, so I'm back in the supplier space again. So have worked with a ton of different vendors, suppliers, and franchising. Really passionate about a lot of the folks in the space that are helping us grow our brands and all that good stuff. So excited to talk about that today. And not that anybody's asking, but we do have the best French macarons in the world.
Hey everyone, my name is Eric Stewart. I'm the Senior Director of Franchise Recruiting with Pillar to Post. I think I'm on the panel because Zach needed some Canadian representation, so shout out to all the Canadians in the room.
7 of them.
All 7 of us, yes. So again, work with a lot of suppliers on the recruiting and development side of things, and I think we'll get into on some areas where we share suppliers across the brand, and then also where we have suppliers specifically just for the development side of things.
Awesome. So let's start from the beginning, finding the perfect match. As we mentioned earlier, the franchise space keeps growing, and I know that all emerging franchisors just have so much time on their hands, so they can talk to endless amount of people. So since we're pressed for time, how do you narrow it down and decide efficiently what vendors to work with? Start. Whoever wants to start. Ben, you could start.
Oh, put me on the spot. Love it. Well, first of all, about the macaroons. Do you guys ship? My wife loves.
We do. We got you. I got you.
My wife loves macaroons. It's a new thing. I don't quite get it, but what was the question again? How do we choose suppliers?
Yes. What does the process look
What's
like?
the process? So
Yeah.
We're a fairly large organization, and we're trying to put our big boy pants on and kind of approach the process in a more sophisticated way. So we typically are going through an RFP process. We're selective about who we bring into that, right? The franchise. One of the beautiful things about the franchising industry, especially home services, is there's a lot of strong partnerships out there. There's a big net, or there's a big network that feels really small. And so you're able to have those relationships and know the pros and cons of the partnerships almost before you start that process. So we do try to have it be really formal, apples to apples comparisons, making sure that we're looking at whatever partnership we're looking at and evaluating, making sure we're treating everybody fairly and really getting down to an apples to apples comparison, and then ultimately making a decision based on what's right for us at the time as well as our franchisees.
I think for us, when we're selecting a vendor, I think one of the things that we kind of learned in the very beginning is that as an emerging franchise, you're in reactive mode constantly instead of looking ahead to the future. So I think in the beginning when we were choosing our vendors, we were like, what can be done right now versus where we were gonna be with 25 units, 50 units, 100 units. And so now with us being at that 100 unit mark, like now it's like when we start looking at these vendors, what do we look like at 200 units? And to make our choices today of what that growth looks like versus what we currently need at the moment. And we bring them in and it's a really big, we're kind of I don't want to say unique brand because we're all unique in here, but our menu changes 52 weeks a year. And I know operations is probably just cringed right now with me. But to find vendors who support that vision is really unique in how they approach us too. I've been in the very beginning where vendors wanted to put me in a box and they're like, look, your model is not going to work. And I'm like, well, you know, we have 50 of them at the moment, and we're growing substantially, so maybe your model doesn't work for us, you know? So, you know, they want to be like, we got to keep your menu, you need the same menu for the entire month. I'm like, that doesn't work. So make sure that when you're interviewing your vendors that your vision is clear and you don't like compromise your vision and don't let them stronghold you into that.
Yeah, we have 6 brands currently, all within home services, and you know, you heard Scott yesterday talk about it, and it's a variety of different concepts. We found that as much as we would love it to be one size fits all on the various types of services we need at every brand, it's not. It's not. Some partnerships make a lot of sense for a certain brand because of unique aspects of the offering, where they do not make sense on the other brand. I love what you said about looking into the future and seeing where the brand is going to be. We've made missteps where we have gotten into a partnership that was really only thought through for the next 12 months, and in reality, it needs to be thought out for the next 5 years, especially with like a tech, like a CRM solution or something like that. Those are very hard changes. You want to be very thoughtful about it. As much as like data, so in CRM, for example, data capture, flowing the full customer journey data all into like a centralized data warehouse to pull out insights and aspects, that's like table stakes for us at this point, and I think everybody should be thinking about data and capturing that and be able to pull together all different sources into one place for future use, even if you're small. But not every, so as long as the supplier can provide that aspect for us, it's really how do we fit it to the brand that we need with the various aspects that brand is needing. And in short, it's not one size fits all for us. It hasn't been anyway.
I think you took my turn.
I'll give it to you now. You can go now.
Thank you. No macaroons for you. I think a lot of it depends on the size of brand you are. Financial resources and budget are always, of course, one of the things you look at. For me, it's always been trying to find the best in class. Really comes to like attending things like this and being out and networking with other leaders and executives and people in your departments and whatever it may be. I always look for, I truly believe vendors become, or suppliers become an extension of your brand. I know a lot of times you're going to have these folks at your franchisee conference. They may be working directly with your franchisees, and I can assure you, your franchisees see no difference between them and you if you made the decision to use them. So, we look for people that fit our culture. We look for products that fit our size. And kind of conversely to what you guys said, and I think you're totally right, I think you can also forecast out platforms or tools that you don't actually need, and you can go into fall in love with features that you may need at 100 units, but you don't need now. So on the other side too, I think you have to be careful and watch how you're growing and that type of stuff too. But to sum it up, basically, I would ask other people in this room, and that's where I'd start my search.
Yeah, I think it's the culture fit and the values fit. So finding suppliers that align with your company values and how you want to operate. And then I think it really comes down to that relationship, because I've met suppliers at a variety of franchise conferences, and you start building that relationship, and we've signed on with them 5-6 years later that we didn't have a need for what they were offering then. And then all of a sudden, 5 years from now, things have changed. And I called Zach and said, okay, when are we finally doing this deal? And I've been talking to him for 10 years. So it's just building that relationship and keeping up with the changes that are going on in the industry.
Yeah, I think that culture is always a topic that's mentioned at all of these conferences and something that we always talk about internally, but thinking about it from a supplier and Zor relationship side is totally different. So do you guys have any examples, or how exactly would you evaluate that culture? Is it just through, like you said, the conferences, or is there any other examples that you guys could give?
Do we have to go in order? Anybody else?
Only if you want macaroons.
Go ahead, yeah.
Again, it's a lot of it's referral stuff for me, but I like spending time with the representatives. If you can get some time with leadership or founder of whatever the product or service is, I think that can teach you a lot. You don't need to spend hours and hours on calls, but just sort of evaluating how they work. Are they flexible? Are they open to being more of a partner? And it's not a transaction. It's a future together. I think it just takes a little extra time and due diligence to do that, and I think it's well worth it for sure.
And I think validation becomes a big part of that. So talking to supplier or franchisors that that are using that supplier. Hopefully you already know of some, but if you don't, then you can go through that supplier and get a list of some of their franchisor clients that you can do validation with.
Culture is a big piece for us. The convention for us, them being present there to be able to talk to our franchisees, and really supporting our vision is really huge for us. I do feel that a lot of vendors, will promise you a lot to get your signature on that paper. So what I like to do is make sure we are so busy all the time and follow through. Sometimes on the orders in is a lot. So make sure, when you do bring on those, that they just didn't tell you something up front, and that you are following up with them in 30 days, in that 60 days, 90 days, because, the honeymoon period does end usually around that 120. So make sure that what they promised you in the front is still what they're doing, and so that their values are being validated too.
Yeah, I love what was said about there's no difference between your supplier and you from the franchisee's perspective. I think that's a totally accurate statement, which means you need to treat it just like hiring an employee. You hire slow, fire fast. Some of you guys have heard that. It's hard to it's hard to unwind a partnership, especially when they're very technically or super integrated into the system. And so long process is okay. Being slow, methodical is okay. Ultimately, you're going to be graded. It's going to make or break your year as far as the enjoyment and the work-life balance that you have. Because if franchisees aren't happy with that partner and it's not getting them the support they need, then you're left holding the bag. You're the one that's trying to piece it together.
Awesome.
It's all her fault.
Yeah, exactly.
So switching gears a little bit, build versus buy fitting the puzzle pieces together. So it's a strength to recognize your weaknesses. And I think that applies to this next question. So walk us through identifying in-house solutions versus suppliers. And I'll pass this one to Yvonne. Yeah.
So this is, so I think when we were asking this question, we're kind of like in with our procurement group at the moment. So we've had them on with our team for 7 years now. And so we're coming up to that point where now where they're at and where we're at, does it make sense for us to bring them in-house? Like, do we bring our own team in-house to do that? And so I think in the beginning that you don't have to have everyone on your team. I know that there's a bunch of fractional CMOs here. Fractional COO. And sometimes it's okay, I feel like, to bring people on as a fractional or not part of your team, that there's a different contract with you. Marketing was really big for us. We couldn't afford in the very beginning to bring on a whole marketing team, but we had an agency that we could use, and they had a whole marketing team, and we were paying a fractional of the cost to use their team. We were small at the time, so we didn't have to have a full-blown every single day had to be some kind of marketing. But now, where we're at, that team is now in-house with all of us. So we kind of build that team to move out of that fractional part into in-house. And we're kind of working through that now with our procurement.
I can speak to this as well too. We're young and like super scrappy, and we brought a lot of stuff in-house very cost efficiently just by creating resource hubs in different countries, frankly. Finance, for one, is huge for us. Franchisee P&Ls, CFO work on the brand level. We literally built separate businesses for this stuff because we felt like in some of these areas we could compete very well with some of the folks in the suppliers space and more cost efficiently too for our brand. So finance is one. Marketing for sure. The only thing we don't mess around with is deploying media because I don't even know how it works, and I don't know if anybody does, but it's a whole other conversation. But like our graphic design folks and copywriters and customer support, all that stuff is in-house. Our tech partnership with Franchisely, like we started from day one with them building the software to build better tools for the industry, but also for our brands and our platform. So we're like literally building it with them. So we go in super deep. Franchise sales and development, same thing. I think there's amazing partners. It just depends on where you're at in your life cycle. There's amazing partners out there to get you to point A to point B. But I think as you grow, you want to have, I don't want to say the words control, but just more influence over the way, the direction that business division goes. That's probably the best term for it. So I'm a big proponent of using the right suppliers, but I'm also a big proponent of doing things in-house if you can do them as well or better.
Yeah, Gabriella from Scorpion yesterday said what keeps her up at night is companies trying to take their marketing in-house. What keeps me up at night is trying to take my marketing in-house. Like, we of our size and where we are in our cycle, we want to make some strategic bets and see if they can pay off. And we have an in-house marketing agency right now that has 300 franchisees that it's supporting with SEO and PPC services and social media posting and the full offering there. It's extremely challenging though. It's extremely challenging. Having the right people, building the right team, and keeping up and basically owning the changes that Google makes, and they're outside of your control. Everybody's feeling the same, but your franchisee sees it as your fault. So is that a bet we want to make, right? Having an in-house marketing agency? We'll see over the next year if that's something we want to choose to unwind. We've always done it, and it's grown rapidly, but is it the right play? It depends. In our origin, we created our own CRM. And that thing is 18 years old now. It's somewhat of a Frankenstein, and we're unwinding it and moving off, and we're actually partnering with the brand that we built that originally for with ServiceMinder. We're transitioning over to a ServiceMinder for that brand. And so times and seasons, what is your core competency? What is your really going to differentiate you and your franchisees in the marketplace? That's where we're trying to make strategic bets and things that we know we can provide value, have a differentiator in the market, and be successful with. And it's hard. Like, taking things in-house there's varying degrees to it, but if you really get big and try to take something significant in-house, you got to be prepared to invest and support it so that you can so you can provide a product that the marketplace is providing, with all of the support and nuance that goes in with providing a whole offering to a franchisee.
Yeah, and going off of that, in the topic of fitting the puzzle pieces together, Eric, in our conversation, you mentioned that you work with suppliers that do the same thing, but for your brand, they work in different ways. So how do you manage that and avoid the infamous too many cooks in the kitchen? What is your best advice for that strategy?
Yeah, so specifically for us, there's 2 areas of our business where we have 2 different suppliers that one works on the brand side and one works on development. And so that's for PR and our digital. So PR, we made the choice this year to add Fishman in just on the development side. And we have a vendor that we work with and we continue to work with on the brand side, but really found we needed to amp up what we were doing on the franchise development side. And we didn't want to distract our existing vendor. They're really good at what they were doing. But we needed to bring in some more expertise on development. So for me, I actually like it more because often development, we're a little bit smaller than what's going on in the rest of the brand, and so our stuff is getting pushed aside with different priorities. So now we bring on a brand that their only priority for our organization is the development side of things, and they've got solid core competencies that we're able to really have them focus and execute for us. Meanwhile, our marketing team continues to work with them on the other side. So for me, I like it. It's not too many cooks in the kitchen because they're working on 2 very different sides of the business. We have to make sure they know what each other are doing and they're connected, but we find it works really well on certain cases.
Awesome. So switching gears again, maintaining positive results in relationships. So we found the perfect match. We discussed how culture is important. So I know that Ben kind of stole my thunder a little bit, but what are some tips on training the supplier or the vendor on your brand? And is there any red flags, like if they don't have a thorough onboarding process, or what are some things to look out for in the beginning stages of getting started? Anyone?
What did I steal your thunder on?
The other Ben.
Oh, good. Yeah, the other Ben stole it. I think, oh man, that's a tough question. There's so many. We have a lot of cooks in our kitchen at our company.
Sorry.
There's a lot of stakeholders that have a say in the partnership, and so franchise or suppliers have to be on their best behavior coming into our system. It's just, there's a lot of pressure, and so responsiveness, if there are bumps, if there are things in onboarding, a real commitment to help and partner with us and get it fixed. Those are that's what everybody's looking at right out of the gate. And so having for example, at ProNexus, which is our call center company, over the years, we could not get launching a brand right. We would sign a brand and it would be okay, we're gonna onboard 10, 15 locations all at once. And it was just like a train wreck for years. I've been in the company for 6 years. We did not get it right until a year ago, finally. And what it was is we just weren't set up to give them the attention. That first interaction with the franchisee or with the brand is how you're going to be known. And so we had to put together basically a strike team for our product that just for the first 60 days really handheld everybody that was coming on board. I think the same thing is the case with a franchisor, with really any service line. You really have to have that onboarding process locked up and extra attention on it, just like you would with FranDev, right? A new franchisee comes into the process. That process is so defined, so baked, and as a supplier, you have to provide that. And that's, as a franchisor, that's what we're evaluating, is like, how smooth is this process? How thoughtful are you? Because you're the expert in how to roll this out versus us telling you how you should roll out your own service. So you owning that is, it helps the trust and confidence that the thing's going to work long term.
I think to add to yours is that if you're bringing on a new supplier, don't do the entire system at one launch, you know? Let them, I mean, obviously they're coming on new too, and you've vetted them, and you think that you've checked all your boxes, and there's always something that comes up. So we just went through a POS integration, and it was a nightmare. Like, they over-promised what they could do, and so we were all gung-ho. We're like, we're going to get all 100 units on them in 30 days, and it's been almost 3 years. And we still got a couple trailing. So anyway, I think before you give them 100% of your trust, let them see what they can do with maybe your 10 units, maybe your strongest, maybe do a mix of your high performers and your low performers and some in the middle to see how they interact with all those, because high performers are always easy to integrate new things into your system, whereas your low performers, they don't check their emails, they don't look at their messages, they're not in your communication, so see how they react to those guys too.
That point of sale switch is always fun, huh? You do that every day.
Never again.
I honestly don't have too much to add to that. It's great.
Yeah, I think just being sure that you have the time to work with the new supplier. There's nothing like signing a contract and then you're trying to quickly get on with other things. So especially for vendors or suppliers that are speaking on behalf, so PR and digital marketing, being sure you have the time to invest in them, that they're learning your voice, and kind of that brand-specific lingo, that they've got the ability to pick that up quickly.
Yeah, so once the solution is integrated, and hopefully it doesn't take 3 years,
That's a
but
little exaggeration, but
yeah.
it felt like years.
Well, once the honeymoon phase is over, how do you guys maintain, a years-long relationships? Is it important that they come to the conferences? How do you make sure they're supporting your franchisees? How do you basically stay on top and make sure that they're still helping you prosper?
I mentioned we go deep on our partnerships. The bigger ones, like we're in Slack channels with their teams, directly. We do bring them to our conferences. We have them roll out their stuff. We queue them up as experts. We try and vet heavily on the front end, so the franchisees are happy with who we bring in from a, communications perspective, functionality, features perspective, all that good stuff, and bring in stuff that's actually solving problems and ultimately making the franchisees' life easier, not necessarily always ours. I think it's another important thing, getting back to selection, is like figuring out stuff that makes your franchisees' life easier. As you guys all know, franchisees are not always the quickest to adapt to new technologies and all that good stuff. So, yeah, it's a couple things for me.
Yeah, I think Ben earlier said the hire slow and fire fast, and I do agree with that. But at the same time, don't fire over dumb stuff. So build a relationship for the long term, and know that it's not going to be perfect, and have that relationship that you can work through when there's peaks and valleys. So don't just flip from vendor to vendor to vendor for the same service, because it takes a while for both parties to really figure out how to best work with each other.
I think too, to make sure that your vendors are communicating with you on their own, like you're not going after their communication. I sometimes think that the ones that are really quiet is the ones that you probably need to go check on and see what they're doing. Sarah just made a good point on the last panel about like your suppliers that are bringing in your aprons, your towels and stuff. They do work off of commission, and sometimes you don't think about that, but go back through your owner's receipts, and you can double check your vendors through your owner's P&Ls too, just to see if there are any red flags. We're always busy, so if you have a vendor that you haven't heard from a little while, just like go home tomorrow, put that on your list, and reach out, or just kind of do some digging on them and see. So I always think quietness sometimes is, can be bad, or just quiet.
Yeah. What is the phrase on that? Anyway, out of sight, out of mind.
Outside of mine, yeah.
Isn't a good thing. It's not a good thing with suppliers. For us, we want our suppliers to be driving that. We want them to have a seat at the table with the relationship with the franchisee. Town halls on a every so often basis. We want them to help sell the vision of why we partnered with them. We continually are preaching vision of why this is so important, where this is going, but the partner has a great sales story as well that they can add to that. So regular intervals with town halls with franchisees if it's appropriate. We definitely have them come to our conference booth. If it's a critical partnership for the brand, we would have them have time with the franchisees in front of them at a breakout session. And then if we do any regionals or anything like that, conference-wise, if it's the right partnership, we want them there as well. In CRM, right, training is always ongoing, so we want trainings. We want the partner to bring in and do a special session for the franchisees throughout the year. Like we're looking for somebody that will help us make the franchisees' lives better and get them on to why we're doing this in the first place, where the vision and where we're going with things.
Awesome. So last question. Are there any emerging trends or developments that you believe will significantly impact suppliers supporting franchisors in the future? AKA, is there any red flags, any last thoughts when it comes to vendors?
I just think that the pace that technology is growing is going to shape a lot of it. I know we're all tired of hearing about AI, but the reality is it's pretty cool and interesting. But I just think like technology is going to continue to rapidly evolve. I think it will replace lots of different types of tasks and potentially roles along the way. You can see it starting to happen already as far as like franchisor service and being able to answer questions more quickly, maybe not having to hire that second customer service person. So the advancement of technology and how quickly it's happening, I think will affect all suppliers and for sure have a major impact on supplier-franchisor relationships now and into the future, for sure.
There's this trend of, and I was talking about it yesterday, there's a trend of like skinnying down your account management team and trying to offset that with AI and technology. I think that works on a scale with like certain types of interactions. Franchisee support with certain things, it's going to be really helpful, and it's going to allow a supplier or a company to support a franchisee even better. The relationship with the franchisor, though, is different. I think suppliers that want to skinny down and layer in technology with that relationship they're going to lose something, because we're on the same team trying to support the franchisee and help make them successful. At least that's how we approach it. And so if you're putting layers between me and you as a supplier, I don't think it's going to be successful long term. So it's like a balance of scale and what type of tech you implement, but the one-on-one partnership between a supplier is critical, and we got to walk before we run with putting any tech in between that.
Yeah, I think it really just comes down to staying connected with suppliers or partners that you're working with and suppliers that you aren't, and seeing what they are doing. So I don't have a specific trend to point out other than the ones that have already been pointed out, but that's how I stay informed on those, is just keep talking, keep talking, keep talking.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for the panelists? Yes. Yep.
Focusing on should you build in-house versus outsource, like how have you found franchisees? Do they like having 2 or 3 options for pay-per-click vendors, or if they just want one from the franchisor? Have you found franchisees like choices in their vendors so they can make decisions in their business owners, or do you think it should be from on the call center or marketing or whatever functions? Yeah, so that's a great question. Franchisees want choice, right? And in certain services, you want to provide choice. You do not want to, you don't want to force everybody into something if it doesn't make strategic sense to do that. So with SEO, you only want one person in the back end of that website, right? You don't want a bunch of suppliers there. You want to have one choice. But with PPC, we give them option. We give them several approved options that work with the brand teams to approve the content and make sure there's a process there. Call center, maybe it's kind of specific to home services, but it's critical, especially in certain service lines where there's a lot of volume coming in, and we mandate it on the brands that it should be mandated, and it's hard to mandate things. You have to constantly go back to the vision of why. A brand new franchisee doesn't have the scale and volume of leads that they feel like, oh, I need to participate in the call center. I can answer all my own calls. That's the wrong thing they should be doing. They should be working on getting the phone to ring even more versus sitting on the phone and answering calls. But helping them, educating them on that's a long-term, that's over and over and over again. You're going to be preaching that message. So I don't know if that answers your question totally, but we try to be pretty selective on what we mandate and what we decide on that everybody has to use, and it's in the FDD versus giving option. We of course would always like to give option, and we'd of course always like to lead with the carrot, meaning like this is why and please choose. But at some point, if it's a strategic like must-do thing, you get those first adopters, you get the middle group that will get on board, and then, the tail end, it sometimes just turns into you have to mandate it and force it.
I'll only add, if you're emerging, you don't want too many selections out there because then you can't get the buying power and the best deals for your franchisees. And I'm all about giving them choices. But remember, they're franchisees for a reason. It's your vision and where you're guiding your brand to go. So sometimes they should know your vision, but sometimes they don't understand the vision, or they are stuck in their 4 walls to see outside those walls. And so using your FAC, if you don't have one of those yet, bring those items to your FAC, let them be the voice of those franchisees, and then ultimately get their opinions and then make the best choice for your brand.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Oh.
So Ben, you might wear this hat, but my question is, Zach in the previous panel asked a question about like team growth and expansion. Are any of you at the point or considering bringing on or creating a position for a director of vendor relations so that your executive team isn't kind of stuck in a hole, an opportunity cost where you have someone managing those relationships, making sure the suppliers are playing nice together in the sandbox? They're all great drinking here, but when it comes time to work together, sometimes there's integration challenges. So the question is, if your brands are at that point.
We're not at that point, but with our brand, like again, we build a lot of our stuff in-house, so we don't necessarily need it, and I don't even know what the size of count is where you would. But
So
maybe someone else can answer that better. But that's not something we're looking at.
we have a vendor team, director of vendor relations. His name's Stuart. He was the last slide that Scott left up there yesterday, his picture. I just thought it was funny. But we did not start that position until we had like 4 brands, and we're doing $200 million in annual revenues. And so that's the scale that it started to make sense. That group has grown tremendously over the last 2 years when we brought them on. And it's been a huge value to both the franchisees as well as the company as a whole. But it was a big investment, right? You're talking about a single person there just to help with partnerships, and it was a long-term vision to it of why we did it.
Yeah, we're not at that point either, but a little bit to handle that is we created a shared Excel file across our company that lists every single vendor, who the executive sponsor is of that vendor, and who the day-to-day contact in our company is, and who the day-to-day contact in that vendor, and who the key executives in that vendor are. So that way, if we ever need to, we can just go and we've got one place to look and see who every vendor is and who all the key contacts are.
And we're contemplating it right now because of us being a food brand. We do have a lot of vendors with our, our proteins and carbs and that kind of stuff, especially with us posting macros on our websites and things. It's crucial to us to have the same product in all of those. And so, so I don't know where we'll be in 2 weeks with that, but we're considering it right now.
All right, I'm sure everybody's stomach is growling, so I think that we're all set here. But thank you to my panelists, and thank you all.
All right, thank you, Olivia, so much. Olivia is right. I know my stomach is growing. Everybody else's too. So my surprise is that it's Shake Shack, guys. So I have Shake Shack for you. I have milkshakes. I have cheeseburgers. I have all the things that one would need when they're hungover. So here's the plan. We are gonna have you guys have.